Hey friends out there in YouTube land, Robert Ham here with Robert Ham Photography. Today I'm answering your questions about the venerable and exciting MiNT TL70 Instaflex. This is a really cool camera. It's an instant camera, twin lens design. I am achieving excellent results with it and I want to share that with you. Now, I've got a viewer question from Connie Leon. I hope I said that right. Connie's brand new to the comments as of this past couple, maybe past 2-3 weeks. So I welcome you to the comments, and here's an answer to your question in a little bit more detail than I gave you on the video description. Connie says, hey, quite cool. And this is in reference to my video, the MiNT TL70 thoughts after 24 hours. So one full day with it. What were my thoughts? I was sitting in my car talking about the camera. And she says, hey, it's really quite cool, but I can't understand why they didn't put some kind of time control or shutter control. It would be easier to expose and more professional and fun. Am I wrong? And I got to tell you, Connie, I thought about that long and hard. When I was looking at the MiNT camera, the TL70, thinking about wanting to actually review this camera, one of the things I didn't understand was why they didn't put a shutter control on it. And the good news is they didn't need to. And they shouldn't have in this instance. Now, it would have been a luxury. It would be great. But here's why it doesn't need one. And it all has to go back to film. This is not a limitation of the camera. This is actually a benefit for the camera. But if we don't think about film, and if we don't think about the medium that we're actually using, then it's easy to look at the camera and start thinking that it needed something that it doesn't have. It's easy to say, man, if I had had a shutter control, and not that you're saying this, Connie, I'm not speaking that towards you, but it's easy for me as a photographer to look at an image that I blew and say, hey man, if I could have controlled something else, it could have come out better. It's aperture priority, it's shutter priority, it's this. There's always something. But that something, in this case, isn't with the camera, it's actually with the film. So let's talk about Instax. Now I did a full video on Instax. I feel pretty confident sharing this information with you. And I also left a link down in the Instax for Pros video where you can go and get the material data sheet for Instax Film straight from Fuji, and it'll tell you everything that I'm talking about. But I'll explain it in maybe a way that's not so technical. Let's go back to the fact that the camera uses 800 speed film. At 800 speed, if you want to use the Sunny 16 rule, which is your shutter speed as a reciprocal of your film speed at f16, then at 800 ISO, we'd have an 800 speed shutter. And we'd have to be at f16. Now, MiNT chose to go with 1/500th of a second, which is basically, we're just going to call it a stop. It's not exactly a stop. 1/400th of a second would be a stop. So, but we're going to say 1/500th of a second. At 1/500th of a second, that's the fastest that the shutter can open and close. At our Sunny 16, we would have one stop of overexposure at f16 with the film. So MiNT included an aperture of a 22. So there is the reciprocal. The Sunny 16 of ISO 800 at an 800th of a second at f16 reciprocates to 1/400th of a second at f22. And MiNT went and gave us 1/500th of a second just so that we can get that 1/3 of a stop more and gate the light a little bit more and bring out some contrast. So they over-engineered it, and that's excellent. Most people are going to use this camera outdoors, are going to need to be at 1/500th of a second at f22. Real quick pro tip, just like the manual says, adjust your aperture dial very carefully. If you want to avoid vignetting, then when you switch to something small like f22 or f16, wiggle it back and forth until you can feel it seat into its natural detent. Otherwise, the actual aperture will be way offset from the lens. It won't be in the center, it'll be on the side, and you'll have some crazy vignetting. Also use that as a creative tool. Recognize that you can take pictures with an offset aperture to encourage vignetting. That's really cool. Okay, pro tip over, back to this. We didn't need the extra shutter speed, very simply because the camera itself is already built to have a max limitation to meet the needs of you when we're outside right there. There's no reason in the bright sunlight that we would need to make it any shorter. But MiNT thought of that. They said, you know what? If you want to make it shorter, just use positive exposure compensation. Make it brighter. So if we are out and you're at 1/500th of a second, because that's what it's shooting at, and you're at f16 and you want to shoot at a longer exposure for whatever reason, you can set to positive exposure and you can get 1 full stop more. So instead of 1/500th, you can 1/200th. You can also do the inverse with negative exposure compensation of 1 full stop when you're in a more shaded condition. The interesting thing is that these understandings take experience. You got to get out there and get some clicks underneath your shutter. Once you do, though, you realize that the system is very intelligent. I had originally been thinking that maybe there was some metering inconsistencies that were going on with the camera, so I started popping out my light meter, which is on my phone. I can't show it to you right now. It's an app. And it's the same one I use when I meter for film. And what I found out was that when I started looking at this little orange and yellow light that's in there, I started realizing that it is metering correctly. Even when I'm adjusting the little electronic value, the exposure value up and down, I can see the light changing. Of course, I don't know exactly what it's doing, but my app that it's showing me is coming up with similar results when I'm changing the aperture. That means that the camera is doing a good job in choosing shutter values that are appropriate for your exposure value compensation as well as the aperture that you're using. So go out, have a great time, shoot with the camera, and enjoy it for what it is. Get some of those great shots. And don't forget to share them with me on Instagram, where you can find all of my work with this camera. I'm having a blast with it. And the images that I may talk about in some of these videos are actually found over on Instagram. So go check them out. Guys, I'm Robert Hand with RobertHandPhotography.com. I'm having a blast with the TL70. I hope that you are as well. Hope you're enjoying my journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let MiNT know that you like these videos by commenting, "Thanks, MiNT, please." And help me share these. We only get a few video likes right now. Let's get those likes up a little bit. I want to remind you, I'll catch you on the flip side and say thank you for watching.